Now, we're going to move on to the big story of the day. And at 12:30 this afternoon, just after PMQs, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt's going to get to his feet and deliver his first budget, a mere 3 years after he lost out in a Tory leadership election to one Boris Johnson and was banished to the backbenches from where we were never going to hear from him again. But he did spend a lot of time, I can recall, saying that more money needed to go to the NHS. Now, John, has written what may be, I think, and we'll talk about it, but maybe one of the most optimistic newspaper intros in Fleet Street history. And it says, I'll read it out to you as soon as I pull it up here. The Mirror today urges Jeremy Hunt to offer us all a brighter future by tackling inequality and child hunger and rewarding heroic key workers. Marvellous. Well done, John. But been followed by possibly the most depressing second line in newspaper history. There are fears the Tory Chancellor will stick to failed policies in a budget that favours the rich. So, John, how likely is it that he's going to actually listen to us and give some money back to the little guy rather than the big ones?
So I think there will be some things in there that are quite helpful for a lot of people. There has been the threat that the energy price cap, which means that bills for a typical household at the moment are about £2,500 a year. They have been threatening to lift that to about £3,000 a year in April. The government have confirmed this morning that they're actually going to extend the cap at the price point it is for 3 more months. So that will help people until the summer. We think that they are going to keep fuel duty at the same rate as it is, so that will be fairly helpful to motorists. And we know there will be some bits of help in childcare in there. At the moment, if you've got a 3 and 4 year old, if you do, I think it's more than 16 hours of work, you get 33 hours of childcare a week. They're going to extend that to 1 and 2 year olds, which will be quite helpful for a lot of parents. There are questions, though, about whether there is enough capacity in nurseries to provide this. At the moment, a lot of people with 3 and 4 year olds struggle to find places that have the availability to give them 30 hours of free childcare. So if you increase that to 1 and 2 year olds, but don't put in more nursery places, that's just going to create massive kind of pressure on the system. The Labour MP, Stella Creasy, who's kind of been campaigning on childcare, she just says this is economically illiterate if you do nothing about nursery places at the same time. So that's helpful. Also, we think that they're going to nick Labour's policy on breakfast clubs for primary school pupils. So at least that will provide, it's not something that the Mirror's done a lot of campaigning on free school meals, but this is providing breakfast clubs so people get children at least have had a meal before they start the school day. That's something that they party promised at their last party conference. The Tories clearly think that's a good idea. They've decided to nick that for themselves. So those are all the bits that will be quite good and quite helpful. But here's the bad news is it doesn't sound like there's going to be a penny of extra money in there to give a pay rise to public sector workers. And we know that the strikes have been a massive deal over the last few months. You just look at today, it looks like there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people on strike today. You've got teachers, you've got civil servants, you've got workers on the London Underground, you've got university lecturers. I'm trying to find the list I wrote down somewhere in front of me. I think I've got most of them, junior doctors as well. So there's loads of people just on strike today. We know what it's been like the last few months. And what the unions have been saying is that needed to kind of settle this is getting more money into places like the Department of Health so they can invest in frontline staff. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be any extra cash going to government departments to help them to pay for pay rises.
Yeah, and of course that's going to mean that any pay rises they do have to cut, it's going to mean effectively a cut somewhere in the service to pay for it. Now, Misha Ben Toby says he'll offer the most vulnerable more misery and suffering whilst making the rich richer and the poor poorer, because that's what the Tories do. Misha, open a window and look at the sunshine. Try and find some positivity in the world. I feel you're right, but let's just try and be optimistic if we can after he's spoken at least. Leslie says it's wishful thinking. The budget will yet more give one hand while taking with the other. So we'll be no better off. Will they be dealing with the energy profiteering? One of the things they're going to be doing in the budget, which I've seen today, which talks about in here, is the energy bill. So you've mentioned the cap, which they're going to keep for a few more months, but they've also decided They're going to take some action on prepayment meters. Now, this is how someone, if you are had difficulties paying your energy bill before now, and you've had a prepayment meter installed, you will pay more for your electricity than you will do if you were on direct debit, which is ridiculous because you are obviously struggling to pay your bills, and you're going to have to pay more for your bills as a result. Now, they're saying that they're going to bring this in line with the direct debit prices, so that it's it's a uniform price, which is great, but it's going to cost 400 million from general taxation. John, why on earth are we all paying the energy companies to be more reasonable? Why don't they just force the energy companies to lower the damn price for those, millions of people who are finding it hardest to pay?
Yeah, I think that is a big question a lot of people are asking. The Labour Party keep pushing for a windfall tax. They've been pushing for it. Goodness knows which budget they started asking for a windfall tax and saying that that's where a lot of the money to pay for stuff needed to come from, that energy companies were making massive profits on how prices have gone up. We have seen some form of windfall tax, but Labour say it doesn't go far enough. It isn't a proper windfall tax. They want it to be increased. And at the moment, the government has been pushing against that, saying, no, that's not the way they're going to fund things.
No, well, Julie's there saying if they weren't storing money in their offshore accounts, there would be money in this country, but nobody tackles that. I'm afraid, Julie, nobody is going to tackle it while the people who are running the country all have money in offshore accounts. Now, we have heard, as John's explained, some stuff that's coming. There's a lot of good news if you're a bit better off. So if you've got £1 million in a pension pot, which is usually if you're earning about 50 grand a year and you've been paying into a pension for 20 years, you can now put more in that pot before it gets taxed. Hooray for you. If you can afford to have children, as John said, you will have the right to some more free childcare. But it's thought that only the Sutton Trust said overnight that they think only 20% of the poorest third of families will actually qualify for it. John, it looks to me like, call me cynical if you like, that the Chancellor is going to say stuff about how he's helping the poorest in the hope that they will believe him, and that when it comes to election time, the fact they don't actually have more money in their pocket will somehow not equate to, they won't calculate what's gone on there. He's sort of saying he's doing stuff for people, but it's not enough, is it?
Yeah, and I think that will be a problem. You get big announcements like this, like the budget, and the government are quite keen to put some quite consumer-friendly policies in there, so then it's easy to go on the TV and talk about. So things like this childcare, saying 33 hours, 1 and 2 year olds, it's quite easy. You can explain it in a couple of sentences. It's something that the Chancellor can go and do TV interviews later, maybe go and post some pictures playing with children in a nursery somewhere. It's something that kind of does make quite a big splash. But I think when it does come to the next election, people will judge the government on how they feel it's actually impacting them in the pocket and how it's working out in reality, rather than just how it was sold in kind of the glossy brochures. And I think if people see that they're struggling to get their children proper nursery places, that they've seen that the prices of the hours that you are having to pay for are suddenly having to go up to kind of make up for this, then people will think, hang on a minute, I'm being stung by this, that this isn't the great offer that it first seemed like when it was being sold at the budget.
Exactly. It's not like we're having an immediate election. There is some time for all the impacts to be felt, isn't it? And just because Jeremy Hunt always reminds me of a surprised-looking duck, wants to go and play Potato Prince in a nursery. You can do that anytime. There he is, quack, quack. Now, Mike says a person would have to put £25,000 a year of spare cash into a pension for 40 years to accumulate £1 million, and the government are going to raise it. If this isn't a tax break for the 1%, it's certainly not for the vast majority of us. And he's referring to the fact that part of the reason for this is they want to bring back qualified people into the NHS, people who've taken early retirement. I understand the stated aim to retain or bring back older doctors, but with other parts of government vilifying doctors for their greed, it doesn't seem like a very consistent message. So we've got all these things about how we're going to help people out. We've got all these things about how we're going to, bring people back into the workplace. But yet there's this big corporation tax hike, 19% up to 25%. They're not doing it in stages as far as we know yet, which would make a bit more sense perhaps for businesses. Small businesses don't have to pay all of it. But it's kind of like, why? I know that they didn't want to cut that too much because that's what Liz Truss tried to do, and the whole world went on fire when she did that. But they could have made that a bit more gradual, couldn't they? Because businesses, we've got a page there in the paper of small businesses going, we can't wear it. We absolutely can't wear this. A sudden 6% increase in your tax for anybody is critical, isn't it? I'd have thought.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the places where you're going to see rows on the Tory side as well. This is somewhere that Tory MPs are pushing over the last couple of weeks. This tax rise, which is going to come in April, moving corporation tax from 19% to 25%. It's been penciled in the diary for quite a long time. It's going to come in April. But different groups of Tory MPs, particularly those who are big fans of Liz Truss, have been campaigning over the last couple of weeks and saying to the Chancellor, you can change it at this last minute. This isn't what the best thing to do for growth in this country is. But obviously it sounds like that has not kind of gone to plan, and that Jeremy Hunt is going to go ahead with this tax rise in April.
Yeah, well, we'll have to sort of see how some of that goes later on. Maybe it's because they do talk, don't they, about rabbits out of hats in the budget, and he'll suddenly stand up and say something no one was expecting. But they've briefed literally almost the entire budget out all over the place so far. So who knows what's left that they haven't actually told anybody. Some of the announcements that we know about do sound quite nice. £23 million to help heat local swimming pools with their energy bills, £33 million for housing for veterans. But when you spread those kind of sums around the country, John, it's 50p a head for veterans. It's 30p a head to run your local swimming pool. That's not going to keep a lot of people swimming or off the streets. Why are they getting such tiny amounts of money? You know, the big money is going on what, the fuel duty being kept, and what else?
The fuel duty is obviously expensive. The energy price cap's expensive. This change that they're doing on pensions that you were talking about, allowing people to put more money in their pension pot before they pay tax on that is actually quite expensive as well. The childcare announcement, that will cost at least £4 billion, maybe more than that. But as you say, yeah, there's always these little bits in the budget, things like this pot of money to help swimming pools with higher bills. And the really important thing to always look at is how much is being spent on these things. And yeah, £30 million or £20 million sounds like an awful lot of money to us. But as you say, once that is spread across the country to all different places, that doesn't end up being too much cash at all.
No, when my little girl gets out of the swimming pool for the last year or so, 6 months probably, she's been shivering because they've had to turn it down a few degrees because they can't afford to keep it heated. They can't afford to keep the air as heated as it was. So it's all well saying they keep the swimming pools open, but if they're coming out shivering and everything else, they're not going to want to get in the first place, are they? Now, Leslie says, I don't think anything they do in this budget will help them win any election. The damage has been and still is being done. They are not dealing with poverty or inequality. The language they're using is telling. You've summed it up, Leslie. Actually, it's very much, I think half the country is sitting there twiddling its thumbs, just going, please hurry up and get out of the way so someone else can do it now. But Rishi's and Keir's popularity is on about even Stevens at the moment. Rishi's pulled it back a little bit with some of his Brexit negotiations and things he's been doing in France and America. So who knows? Things have still got a couple of years before the next election. It could yet turn round. We'll have to find out, won't we? Keep asking us your questions about the budget or what you think about Boris Johnson's evidence that he's going to give next week to the Privileges Committee and what you'd like them to ask him. What would you like Jeremy Hunt to do in the budget for you? What would make a big difference to your life? Let us know.